for everybody who is watching or will be watching later virtually. And my name is Samuel Chu. I'm the president of the Campaign for Hong Kong. I have the privilege of being able to be here to help moderate the discussions and debate today, specifically on the topic of art censorship. I think most of you were here yesterday and you got to see some of the display that are outside. I want to just acknowledge that if you have not seen all of the display and the exhibits outside, please take time to do that. I want to give a shout out to Loretta, who curated and has been a driving force behind the exhibition that you see outside. I'm going to briefly introduce everybody here on stage, but I'm going to actually start with some questions for each of them so that we can get the conversation started. And then when Eric is able to join us, I'll introduce him and get him plugged in. To my left, this is Nik Williams, who is the campaign and policy officers for the Index on Censorship that's based in London.
Hello, Eric.
Oh, is it? Oh, so Nik had traveled here from Glasgow, and so we're glad to have you. Index on Censorship, if you're not familiar, is an organization that specifically support and defend freedom of expression, and we're glad to have Nik here. Next over, the man that needs no introductions, but I will try anyways. Jens Galschiøt, who's a Danish sculptor artist, who has been the driving force of this particular series of event here at the EU Parliament this week. I think you're one of the only person I know where some of a piece of your art has been arrested as part of a prosecution in court against a number of people in Hong Kong. So Jens and I go way back, and we're really glad to have you. And you see that you have these miniature pillow shame that please feel free to take one, and Jens will talk a little bit more about that. And then towards the end, on the other side, is artist duel. Lumli Lumlong, who they advise me that they come as one set, meaning that they don't speak separately. So I'm really glad to have both of you. And they are Hong Kong-born artists that is now living in exile, working in exile, and continue to produce and display work that not only touches on the protest theme, which they were well known for, but all of the social dynamics and issues that are going on, and they are, even in exile, are still trying to make a difference with their art in Hong Kong. I'm gonna actually, so Eric, at some point will join. Eric Ware, who's the former president of the International Association for Art Critics. He's gonna be joining us, I think, from Italy, and we'll get a chance to actually do that. Actually, let me just start with Jens, actually, because I want you to actually just say briefly about why are we here? Why did you imagine us here, and why are there chairs in front of the stage here?
Yeah, because this. Okay. Yes, we had invited these people. They should have been here because this is about these people who normally sitting in this chair. The reason I have made this conference and this discussion is there's some special with the art market in Hong Kong and in whole Asia. The special thing is it's based in Hong Kong, who was a kind of part of the Western world for nearly 100 years. So the whole market in Asia is dominated by the Western capital, art capital, and the art meaning of the freedom of expression and all this kind of thing. And this is based in Hong Kong. This is this 4 or 5 really big firms who are making control over the whole market in Asia. This is not a problem. It should be a good position, but it's not a good position. But it should be, because everybody here, nearly everybody here, and we have a really big problem in China, in Hong Kong. For many years, China has tried to to make censorship of art and freedom of expression. A lot of us couldn't go to Hong Kong anymore. We couldn't make art. If we make art, if we make this contract, the Chinese government make an attack against us. So this is really, really difficult to make any critic and any art about China. If you do that, then you are kind of criminal. So I think. Oh, hello.
So we have Eric. So let me let Jens finish, and then I'll introduce again Eric into the conversation.
Yeah. So this is the reason we make this one, because the only possibility to make something in Hong Kong. We could make a lot of demonstration, we could make a lot of things, but the really way you could make changing in Hong Kong is to make the capital do something with Hong Kong. And the capital is these people there. And they should do that, because they are the Western world, and they should do, not to accept the censorship in Hong Kong. So this is my meaning to force them
I can see that there's two people in the meeting, myself and Kira, but I don't get to see the meeting.
Okay, maybe I should just.
Well, I've got it on my screen. Me and him. Me and her.
So yeah, that's just the rest. So can you hear us, Eric?
Reasonably.
Okay, so we're gonna try to make this.
Oh, you can see me. Okay. You can see me on the screen. That's
yes.
Right.
So yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll just try to make this work as best as possible.
Okay,
I know that technology is not the easiest these days, and we just got started, Eric, and I want to bring you in a moment, but. Jens, you talked about the importance of, and this is, I think, something that we haven't heard a lot about, which is the role that art galleries and auction houses are playing in this particular arena. I know that you invited all of the major, you see their names right here, so feel free to, yeah, I think the sound is going to be a little bit of a problem. So, yeah, we just hear, okay, perfect. So I do want to acknowledge that Art Basel sent a statement after they received the invitation, and I'm going to read this because they have asked us to read this in full to their response that of the invitation to join us here today. So here's the full statement from Art Basel. Art Basel Hong Kong plays a vital role for galleries, collectors, institutions, and the broader arts ecosystem in the city and the wider region. The Hong Kong art scene has grown exponentially since our arrival in 2013. From the opening of new museums such as M+, to a vibrant mixture of commercial and non-profit galleries, auction houses, and artist-run spaces. And our show has become a focal point for the city's arts community. Today, Hong Kong has an unrivaled position as a cultural hub in the heart of Asia, with a strong local art scene and a general public with a keen and growing interest in the arts. We have never faced any censorship issues at our shows, nor have we been asked to do anything differently since the introduction of the National Security Law. As with all Art Basel shows, our selection committee is responsible for reviewing applications, selects galleries solely based on the quality of their booth proposal. We are committed to Hong Kong's vibrant cultural community and to continuing to provide a platform for the vital exchanges and conversations around art for which Art Basel is renowned. Eric, I'm going to bring you into this because you wrote a letter earlier, I guess last year, specifically calling for the boycott or of the Art Basel in Hong Kong. Do you have any response to this statement, and what do you think?
Right. Well, I've given you some notes, Samuel. I mean, I think can you hear me? I'm a bit worried about feedback.
It's okay.
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
We're muted though.
Okay.
You can't hear us.
Okay. Yes. I think the difficulty here really is so much of it is already baked in as self-censorship, so that Art Basel doesn't necessarily have to censor so much because the galleries themselves understand what's not allowed. Certainly those operating locally are very aware. Those coming from abroad probably also are as well. This, I think, is the major problem that's occurring around the event. And I guess part of the evidence for that is really the lack of topics and events which are occurring at Art Basel.
So I want to switch gear and just quickly bring, because they have Jan's, obviously you're based in Denmark, but obviously you've been to Hong Kong a number of times. You have art pieces that have been there and displayed there and now arrested there and taken, confiscated. Lumli Lumlong, you were born and you have worked in Hong Kong for until recently. Why did you decide to leave?
Sorry, you're asking me?
No.
Yeah. Hi everyone. We are Lumli Lumlong. We are a Hong Kong artist duo who have created socially engaged work for over 10 years now. And under the rule of CCP, we were politically persecuted. So in 2021, we fled Hong Kong to the UK. And we have been living in London for 2 years now. And looking back, in May 2021, we held an exhibition at Hong Kong Arts Centre, and some pro-CCP journalists came under pretense to our exhibition and bought our painting albums. And then we were accused by the pro-CCP media of violating the national security law and using art to promote Hong Kong independence. So one of our painting albums called Liberation of Art was banned.
Yes, and the police even came to our studio to threaten us. I still remember the police said, there is a case about you both. And then I asked him, what case is it? And then he said, I can't tell you, but I'll be back.
Yeah, just like Terminator.
Yeah, so I think, yes, so we left Hong Kong in a very short period of time. And so we are now exiled in London, and actually, we always say that how can a painting overthrow a government? Yeah, but if a painting can overthrow a government, then the government must be very fragile. Yeah, so we have no choice. We fled Hong Kong, and we hope. But we do not feel totally safe even in the UK. Yeah.
So I want to follow up on that point. So now that you're living in exile and diaspora, you're in the UK. You mentioned that you still don't feel safe. In what ways do you still feel like that you are under pressure, or there's surveillance, or there are any threats to you, even as you are in UK now?
Yes, we have been living in London for 2 years now, and we didn't think the UK was 100% safe, and we didn't realize that we could face so much repression here, and we still experience the transnational repression until today. And looking back in April 2022, we participated in an exhibition in London. And again, some pro-CCP journalists came under pretense to our exhibition, and then we were criticized by the pro-CCP media for being riotous. And during that week, we lost 3 accounts: Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp.
Yeah. Yes, the hacker even hacked into our Facebook account and then changed our username. And because he set himself an admin of our Facebook page, and then he also created some groups to invite our followers to join that group. Yes, yes, it was terrible. Yeah, so.
And the Instagram account was also banned.
Yes, because the hacker even he hacked into our Facebook and changed our profile picture into an ISIS flag, and so the Facebook banned our account in 30 minutes. And some let me check that, because Facebook has once sent us a notice saying that our profile picture may show content which makes it harder to create a safe community. So he suggests us to change our profile picture. If we don't do that, Facebook will reduce our distribution, something like that.
So Nick, this kind of falls into part of your research index of censorship. So this is the most kind of direct personal attack on art is to the artists themselves. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found in terms of what is going on that beyond censorship, but a direct transnational repression threats to artists that even after they leave Hong Kong, they're still facing?
Yes, so Index, we've been looking for a long time at the influence of Chinese soft power or CCP censorship out with mainland or Hong Kong. And we discussed yesterday sort of transnational repression. And there is a very, very developed, very sophisticated way that CCP actors can directly interfere with artwork or encourage self-censorship in a similar manner that Eric was talking about. And there's not one tool they've used. I mean, an interesting example was looking at Bali Cao's exhibitions in Europe over the last few years.
You want to just briefly, so everybody knows who Bali Cao is?
Yes. So Bali, who also did our front cover for our report, I mean this is black and white, so it doesn't do it justice, is a sort of vocal graphic artist currently based in exile, who's for a long time been very critical of the CCP. He's also done a lot of work critical of Putin, and especially he was also very critical of anti-vax or anti-COVID narratives. And as a result of his outspokenness, he has faced a litany of threats. And for a long time, he went unnamed and anonymous. He would walk around in a mask, and it's only been relatively recently because there had been constant attempts to uncover his identity. So I think he then took it upon himself to say this is me. And he's been very outspoken. I would say he's one of the most high-profile Chinese artists, maybe alongside Ai Weiwei as well. And I think that status does give him a little bit of protection that is not available to smaller artists or less well-known artists. But diplomatic pressure has been a really powerful tool by the Chinese authorities. There have been 3 exhibitions of Bali's work in Europe, in Italy, Czechia, and Poland. All 3 exhibitions have been faced by diplomatic pressure. The exhibition in Brescia in Italy, there was a sort of communique from the local embassy in Italy saying that the exhibition would threaten friendly relations between China and Italy. In Poland, as soon as the exhibition was announced, embassy staff came to the exhibition to demand that it was cancelled. And docks in Czechia, Prague in Czechia, also received a phone call encouraging them to cancel the exhibition. I should say all 3 galleries withstood the pressure and the exhibition went on, which was an incredibly courageous step, and a lot of them also had support from their either local or national governments in continuing to conduct the exhibition. But in Italy, this was also faced with adverts for the exhibition being defaced, and Bali believes it may have been connected to the United People's Front. But Bali did claim that when we were speaking to them for the report, that he believes that the tensions here prevented other countries coming forward to take the exhibition. So while the galleries themselves were able to endure the direct threats of censorship, it sent a signal to other galleries to not even commission it, to avoid the pressure. And we've seen a lot of diversity. We're seeing a very diverse focus on different forms of artwork as well. So there's a very interesting case of an Indian playwright who was planning to perform a play on the Lhasa uprising. And obviously we know Tibet is obviously another point of very contentious discussions in China. But this was in London. And the playwright Abhishek alleges that he was being stalked during the rehearsals of the play, and then the people who were stalking him, he decided to talk to them. He's like, you know, he'd endured so much, he decided to speak to them. They offered for a Shanghai theatre to buy the rights to his performance, which, you know, for a young playwright, that's sort of what you want. You know, you want to be able to make an income. But he was worried that because of the subject matter, what would happen is that they would buy the rights and then never perform it. And because they have the rights, he would have no ability to put it on himself. So he refused, and then he alleges that they physically assaulted him and then forced him to watch a documentary, basically alleging that the Dalai Lama was a criminal. At the same time, the play was ultimately delayed, and then there was pressure. Well, he alleges there was pressure from the British Council to delay or to even withdraw the play because of arts programs they have in place in Beijing, and this play could disrupt that sort of arrangement. And this is again this sort of diplomatic back and forth with China, and then host countries like the UK having to know how to navigate that, and knowing that there could be repercussions because of these partnerships. And we've seen a lot of these different examples of how people have to make the decision themselves to withstand the pressure, or for institutions themselves. And it should not be for individual institutions to be able to make that very risky, very challenging decision themselves. They need to have the support of the state. They need to have processes set up to ensure that Chinese diaspora artists are able to be protected and their work to be sort of screened.
Thank you, and I think Badi is a great example of this. I've been to all three of those exhibitions that actually did eventually go off. I was also with him here a little over a year ago. We did an exhibition of his art here at the EU Parliament, actually displayed it for a couple weeks here. But I do think that is an interesting, because so much of this happens behind the scene. So I'm going to bring Eric, if I can bring you back in. You have a deep and vast understanding and experience in the sort of behind the scene part of the art world. Can you help us understand, from the perspective of the gallery and the auction houses, what are their perspective and what are their risks and what are they thinking about when they are given an opportunity, for example, to host a show from Badi? What are the roles and the risks that they face as auction houses and as galleries?
We can't hear you. One sec. One sec. Sorry. One sec. It's our fault. Okay. I think try again. Yes.
Okay. Now we can hear you. So start over.
Okay. Right. Right. Well, to begin with the galleries, I think the situation of the galleries is rather like was described a moment ago. That sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Just a moment here. Right. With the galleries, their anxiety is what will happen to them if they mount a show, particularly in Hong Kong. That they may face direct criticism from the press, which may be followed up by police or by other agencies of government who will come on health and safety charges or things of this kind. The auction houses are probably a bit more sophisticated and are not dealing with quite this problem. What they instead worry about is the market which they're dealing with, which is both a combination of Chinese clients as well as local clients, and basically reputation. And I think they make a lot of decisions in-house to decide whether something is is going to receive poor publicity. I mean, the case I'm most aware of recently is that artworks in China from the 1990s, maybe 2000s, that had to do with the Cultural Revolution or with mocking images of Mao Zedong these are no longer being taken by the auction houses in Hong Kong. And this is, I hear this from people who are owners who tried to place these works with the auction houses. And previously, these were not a problem to transact. And that's, I think, part of the problem here is that the whole sense of what is forbidden is moving, and it depends really on kind of current images coming from China, current policy ideas. So I think the bigger thing that we face looking at this abroad is the problem that if these are things that are forbidden in Hong Kong, whether an auction house will be comfortable to try to sell them in Europe. And I would say probably not. What I've seen is that works that have to do with more antagonistic views toward China are being transacted by smaller auction houses in Europe that don't have a connection to Hong Kong. And you know that's one way of working this business, but it certainly suggests that the auction houses in Hong Kong are being influenced in their European operations by restrictions in Hong Kong.
I can keep you on, Eric, for a second now that we have you unmuted. And there are other parts that to the overall picture of the puzzles, right? So there's galleries, there are auction houses, there are art festivals that we already talked about,
yes,
that you have spoken about. There are also awards and other forms of institutions that are part of it, and I think you might be familiar with this. This is recently there was a series of leaked emails about a science fiction award, the Hugo Award, where the selection committee, since the award is being hosted in China this year, that they deselected or excluded a number of authors of Chinese descent who received enough vote to be considered by the award, but were taken off the consider list because of sensitivity about China. So, what other pieces are we not seeing? And I think that what other pieces are in the puzzle of this art world that I think are important for us to know?
Well, I think one other group that's significant are museums and large organizations in Europe which are looking to expand their operations into China and to Hong Kong, and they will hesitate about programs about either Hong Kong or China which they mount outside, say in their home territory in Europe. Whether they will let them be vetted exactly, or whether they will simply make in-house decisions thinking this would be uncomfortable to bring these kind of themes in.
So, Nick, you want to jump in on this?
Well, it's also good to what you were saying about, Ali, what Eric was saying about how so much happens behind the scenes as well. So even to go back to the Basel quote, is that they may not have directly participated in censorship, but we don't know who's able to put themselves forward, especially with the vague terms within the national security laws. So are people only putting themselves forward knowing that they are themselves not working on the stuff that can be considered? So it's just censorship downstream, as opposed before it gets to Art Basel. And there's also, I mean, one thing that we did for the report was looking at the economic ties with institutions in Europe and Chinese companies or partnerships with Chinese institutions, which is a very hard thing to find. We were not as successful as we hoped we would be in terms of that, private institutions tend to be fall outside of FOI laws. So we have things like the Tate Modern in 2018, 2019 received 18% of all of its corporate sponsorship from Chinese sources. The Uffizi in Italy had a partnership with Bund One Museum, which will generate, they think, 6 million euros in profits. And also many galleries have partnerships with Alfino brand, which is linked to Alibaba, which sells merch. And there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with these sort of relationships, but we have no idea as to the terms of these partnerships. Whether there comes into any editorial sort of shaping, whether there will be threats to withdraw funding if there was exhibitions that were critical of the CCP. And this interweaving of commercial interests puts the onus on institutions to make sure these contracts are watertight in terms of total curatorial independence, that money cannot be withdrawn in response to the content. And again, that puts onus on them who will have to balance the economic interests, especially with limited public spending going towards the arts in a lot of European countries. So that's a really complicated landscape that each of these institutions has to navigate, but we need them to be transparent and really robust. They can't talk about artistic freedom as like a watchword. It needs to actually underpin all of their decisions they make, including their economic ones.
Yes.
Yes, I have never made an exhibition with China critical art like the Pillar Shin without the government in China, and the local embassy has made something. They try to influence with the state, or ask the state not to exhibit me, to close the place where we put it out. And here in the European Parliament, they have 3 times now. I think they have contact the member of the European Parliament and ask them don't to exhibit me, because I'm a Danish man and I'm not making art, I only making trouble from China. And even on the minister has tried to contact Kira, who have made this conference. So they're making really big press on me everywhere, and this 10 times or more. So I think this you read about from Art Basel. This is a really, really good example for really art washing. They're using art to say we are making art, we are not political, we are the poor and clean, and we are good people. And China making art washing. Now, in the moment now, they have the big conference like this, just much bigger, with a lot of arts firm who come there and ask about to develop the art scene in Hong Kong. And it's completely crazy. It's hard to, we are not in the same world. Because I know there's a girl here who have Loretta Law, who has a curator of this exhibition outside here. She has made a letter to the Art Basel and asked them if they really want to do something with the censorship in Hong Kong, they could put, she will bring a little bit of piece of the Pillar of Shame to the exhibition. So then you could prove they really stand up for Hong Kong. But they never prove anything. Never. So you can't believe it, you can't trust them. They only earn the money. So this is about money. Everything. It's not about art. So I think all they talk about, these people, they're really crap. They're a liar in a way. And I think this is a way the art scene and all the artists could attack them. Because it's not a good thing for the Western firm to be a liar. And it's quite opposite, you can see that. It's not quite easy. They could just have the finger of Ai Weiwei in the front of the Tiananmen Square. You could have that in the big posters on the conference in the Hong Kong they do now. Then we believe them. But if they don't do that, then we don't believe them. Nobody believes them.
Really?
She's a ghost.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm sorry that because we do protest art, so I can't tell something that is about the art auction, but we can share that in the past we collaborate with some shops in Hong Kong to sell our paintings. But however, the pro-CCP media criticized us again for being rioters. So and they also criticized us for helping to develop the Yellow Economic Circle. I explained that Yellow Economic Circle means supporting the protesters and sustaining the livelihood of the pro-democracy business owners and staff. So afterwards, the shop owners suspended for our cooperation, and then we faced financial difficulties. And to sustain our livelihood, we don't have many choices. Unfortunately, some of our paintings are privately collected. However, most buyers, they prefer purchase with cash, and because they don't want bank transfers to leave a record. and giving a so-called evidence to the police on sedition charges or support the protesters. So they don't need any receipts or to have their names mentioned at the exhibitions, even they are collectors. So they support us but prefer to do so secretly. So you can see fear lurks in everyone's heart. And to respond to Jens, that famous photo of Ai Weiwei, I remember that at that time, the former chief executive Carrie Lam said that the officials will be extra cautious to ensure M+ Museum does not undermine the national security law. And furthermore, Eunice Yong Ho Yen, the lawmaker and the pro-CCP legislative councillor, and she said regarding the artworks, it was spreading too much hate to Chinese government. So don't you think this is art censorship? For us, we think we usually ask if the government isn't doing anything wrong, why is it afraid of our painting? Because the government controls the rule of law by taking laws into their own hands. The rule of law just depends on the government's mood. So as artists, we don't know which red line we have crossed, and we can't create under such great pressure and often practice self-censorship.
So, Jens, I want to ask you about specifically the incident with and what has happened to the pillar. There are many other entities and institutions that are involved when these type of censorship are being enacted. So, for example, you and I have talked a lot about this. I was part of a hearing at the U.S. Congress and the Senate and the House committee that talked about the U.S.-based law firm, Mayer Browns, that were hired and paid as the in-between, that they were the one who actually sent you the letter that says that you have to remove the sculpture. And then when it was actually taken down, you had tried to retrieve it and try to get and contract, transportations and trucking companies to be able to. What was your experience in terms of how many people are actually involved when it comes to taking down and censoring art and free expression in a place like Hong Kong?
There's a lot of people connected to that. That I think we're making with the Mayer Brown, this firm who write to me. It's not the right to me, the right to the people in prison. The right to the Albert Ho, before. So the leader of the Alliance and the democracy movement, they sit in jail, and then they send them a letter and say, you have a sculpture in the Hong Kong Zoo, you must put it away. If you don't put it away, this belongs to the public, and we could destroy it. And then I saw that CNN called me, and then we make a letter to the lawyer firm. They said this is not belong to the democracy movement. This is belong to a Danish artist, me. This is my own property sculpture. I have given to exhibit in Hong Kong together with the democracy movement. So the democracy movement is a kind of an exhibition place, and they do what they should do. They have the exhibition for the sculpture, they watch it every year, they make public about it, they make a discussion about it. This is what you expect every exhibition firm should do, like Art Basel, like Sotherby, and this kind of thing. So they do what normally exhibition firms do with my sculpture. And then the security law take this sculpture now and use it as a kind of evidence against it. And I think this is the reason they make self-censorship in all this firm, because they are afraid to do in the same position. But they must do something, because these people are sitting in jail for now 8 years, and they maybe sitting 10 years more, because of their fighting for freedom, because of the fighting for the art and the fighting for the freedom of expression in Hong Kong. You can't let these people sitting down and then get all these people free to earn a lot of money on the art market and use a lot of art washing and say we are the good guy. They are not the good guy. So this was the reason we attacked Mayor Brown. And when we attacked Mayor Brown with thousands of artists who get right to Mayor Brown, there was 2,000 lawyers. And you get the hearing in the United States. After 14 days, they must giving up and have the white flag. Because okay, we are giving up, we leave Hong Kong now. Because they know if they don't do that, then the whole business for Mayor Brown in the whole world was go down. And I think this is what happened. It could be happening for all this firm. Because they are living by telling people, oh, we are a good guy, and when we come to the finances and drinking wine, then we are still the good guy. And this shows the people we are using the money on the right way. This is what you're using art to. This kind of art washing. You can be a crime, and then you can have a good painting, and then all people love you. So this is what you're using. This is okay in a way. This is a part of the show. We know that. But this making an attack. If I go into this meeting in Sotherby and take the photo of the fuck finger from my way and say, why do they go that in Hong Kong? Then they are finished. Then it's not easy. This is a good place to stay in drinking wine. So the risk we are trying to make a movement and attack them everywhere. In New York, in London, in Paris, we can't attack them in Hong Kong, but we can attack them everywhere in the world and say, you must take responsibility what you're doing in Hong Kong. You must do something. You must show you are on our side and not on the side of the Chinese. This is a story about the Pillar of Shame, and I think this is the possibility for a lot of artists to help the movement in Hong Kong, and to help the people who are the white president, and to help all these people who now struggling around in the Lousy Gallery in London and in New York and whatever, and try to sell the art. So this is the way we should do that, and I would ask people to help us to do that.
So that's what I want to switch to focus on is what can we do and what should be done at the various different levels and at the various different institutions that are part of this process. Eric, if I can bring you back. So there is a little bit of a disconnect, right? For an average consumer, for someone who's like me, who are not in the art world, there is a disconnect between the art houses and the galleries and the auction houses to me going to an exhibition. I'm not really in the position necessarily to feel like I can influence. So we have Jans and other artists here who obviously plays a role, but their livelihood is often dependent upon the relationship with the art houses. So what are the pressure points? What can be done to these major festival institutions or art houses, aside from getting people who are super rich, who are collectors and buyers, who say that I want these pieces and you should have these pieces available for me?
Well, I think where there are exhibitions that connect to Hong Kong and China, obviously people should be very critical and complain of things that are missing or parts of the narrative which are not available. This is something people who are critics, people also outside of society can bring as a criticism to these spaces. On the other hand, with regard to the auction houses and others, I think there also needs to be a level of support to protect them from the sort of pressures that they receive in Hong Kong. Basically, to say that to allow them to push back, to say that at the very least that they are protected when they work in Europe, that they should be able to do whatever is allowed locally. Obviously, there's some problem in accepting this argument because this seems to follow the Chinese argument that events happen, human rights happen locally and they don't have a universal application. But at least it's a starting point to say that this kind of activity must be protected in European markets. And that, I suppose, again, is really something which has to come from the broader civic society, looking at what's happening when these auction houses are operating, putting forward the complaints, but also trying to support them in some sense.
So, back to the artists. What can be done? So you obviously have you have continued to put out art, and even without the support of galleries and auction houses, you'll continue to find ways to put your work into the world. So I have a few questions for both Lumli Lumlong and then for Jens. What do artists individually need to be supported, to find ways outside of this existing system to make a living, to actually continue to do their work? But also, what would you want other artists to do that would help push back on what we're describing, what we're seeing?
I think there's a case that also been maybe you should explain that. Nik Williams, this is a photograph. She's making big movement for a couple of years ago, I think 1 year ago only, because of all the museum. They are making a lot of support from the firm called Shackle. This is a firm who made medicine. And it's a big problem in the United States because a lot of people are addicted to this medicine. So then they try to block this medicine firm to using art as a tools to whitewash the medicine firm. This is they moved millions of dollars away from the sponsors list in MoMA and a lot of other places in the world. So this is something. This is show. This is not. It's not so difficult. It's strange. It sounds strange, but Sakel is one of the biggest firms in the world. But they must giving up because we have something they don't have. We have our moral and we have a good intention. So I think we can use this as a tool. For example, if we could ask all the really well-known artists like Ai Weiwei, like Banksy, and a lot of others to make critical artwork and put it into the action, and put it to Hong Kong action, and say we want to sell it there. We're going to earn money on that. Put it there. So this is a way to do that. If a lot of artists are putting a lot of artwork in, and the auction house says the whole time, "Oh, we don't sell that," then everybody knows this is a lie. So this is a way for every single artist to do something. Especially the artists who are so well known, so they normally being sold on the auction house. I've been my art is sold on the auction house in Denmark without problem. They ask me often, "Do you want to sell something?" But if I ask them to put the same artwork to Hong Kong, they say, "Oh, this is not a possibility." But they know there's a good money, but they don't do that. So I think this is a way all artists could do. And I think another way this could be to go inside the all this. This is a public place. If you have a auction, then you have all the pieces around you, and then you invite the public place to go there, and you get wine on the same place. Take your good clothes on and go there and go there with a little posters of Ai Weiwei or whatever you want, and put it around and ask them, and ask, do you know that? Do you know they do this in Hong Kong? This is a strange thing. Why they do that? They look like good people. Why they help the Chinese government to harass all these people? This is a quite funny way to do that. But you destroy the meeting if you do that. And this is the point. And you can do that if at the same time when they pay you champagne. So it's a good position. There's no problem at all. But we need a lot of artists who think this is a good idea to help the Hong Kong people to make art of censorship. This is a word from everybody, not only artists, also people who are investing to make a defense against what China are doing with the world.
Your mic really does not like censorship.
Yeah. So it's time. I would like to say thank you to our curator Loretta Lau and Jens for inviting us. And they usually to curate some exhibition and collaborate with artists from different countries. In my memory, including Burma, Thailand, Taiwan, Ukraine. Yeah. So I think it is not enough to work alone. So we should collaborate with other artists from different countries to enhance our power to fight with the totalitarian monster. And because Hong Kong is located next to China, so we understand the cruelty better than others. Because we are victims, especially in the movements in 2019. So we hope more people will be awakened. And we don't want Westerners to unilaterally help Hong Kong, but rather for them to realize that CCP is using different methods to invade the world. So they should take steps to protect their interests and foster collaboration. And we even we are concerned that CCP may initiate a war against Taiwan or provide covert financial or military assistance to other countries.
My opinion is quite simple because you know the CCP is a big monster, getting bigger and bigger, and everyone knows the truth, but few dare to say to tell the truth. So my solution is quite simple: be brave, because not only the artists, everyone in the world. Yeah.
And also, I'll ask you, Samuel, about something, because there's also a political system. And I think the political system in the Western world has an interest in what we're talking about here. Because they need also to stop China's influence in Asia. So what do you think? I think the only reason will really help us to go down with the Mayor Brown, this is the political system who helped them. And it's the same with Jordan and this action do with the medicine firm. So it's really important there's a political support for people who are sitting in the good position in the Parliament and say, we not want our firm to do this kind of thing in Hong Kong. So this is really important for us. We can't do that alone. We are too weak as artists only. I think we need really big support from them. What do you think about this?
Before I kind of jump in on that, Nik, I want you to jump on this question as well. Is you know, in your study, you obviously unravel a lot of these funding issues, relationships. Many of them involve government at all levels, of local government, public institutions, and then federal government. You know, before I jump in, I want you to kind of weigh in. What should government be doing? What is the political pressure point that can be applied on this?
I think a lot of our research was looking at Chinese art in Europe. And so I think when we look at European states where a gallery may be putting on an exhibition or things like that, is ensuring that if there is any pushback, that state is there actively defending the institution themselves. So the institution don't feel on their own making a decision maybe to pull back. And I think to be very explicit, and I was saying earlier, like this commitment to freedom of expression actually needs to manifest in concrete terms. It can't just be something collecting dust in the statute book. It needs to manifest actively. Because you do have, you know, as I said, those three galleries I mentioned with Badi, you know, three of them all managed to endure the pressure. There was an exhibition in Nantes that was looking at Mongolian art. And Chinese pressure tried to get them to change certain words. I think even to remove Genghis Khan, which quite a key actor in Mongolian history. And the gallery they cancelled the exhibition because they would rather cancel than censor. And you know, that's for an institution, that's a really drastic decision and probably had economic impact on the institution themselves, but their principles because of their principles, they had to sort of step back. And this goes back to what we were talking yesterday with Simon about in terms of transnational oppression. So much of it doesn't see the light of day, and it's also incredibly hard to attribute. Like the attack on Abhishek, we have no knowledge as to whether there were ties to the CCP. You know, and most of these cases you have as well. You've seen it with extraterritorial threats by Russia against Volkov, a colleague of Navalny. The Lithuanian intelligence agencies believe the Russian state to be involved, but you never know. So we need as much of this stuff in the public. We need this stuff to happen in view of democratic institutions, and we need states to be really proactive in looking at transnational oppression, both monitoring it, how you deal with the actual threat itself, but also how you protect the person being targeted as well. Citizen Lab in Canada has done some very important work on this as to what protection regimes should be in place for human rights defenders who are being attacked across border. But there's also a way, you know, there's a role for artists. I mean, in our report, Lumli Lumlong wrote this amazing line, sort of write less, paint more. And this idea, I think, is a really powerful thing. I've been recently reading about the Bengal famine that happened in 1943, which led to the death of 3 million Indians, and Bangladeshis now. And the colonial government would not allow any newspaper to use the word famine. Like, they were the censorship regime was incredibly strict. You can never use the word famine, even though people could see hundreds and thousands of people dying, emaciated people on the streets. And then the Statesman, which is a newspaper in India, discovered that there was a loophole in this censorship protocol because it only covered written text. So they discovered if they took photos of victims of the famine, they could not be censored. And so those photos started being published in the newspaper to the point where it became impossible for them not to use the F word. And that changed, you know, and then you had the BBC getting involved, you know, once it had got past that point. And so, you know, there will always be loopholes that artists can exploit, but they need to know that they'll be protected to do so. And one last thing, just to go back to Jens's point, you know, when you have artists or art galleries in Hong Kong and they're wanting to show how independent they are, they should be tested, as you say. Like, the onus on them is perhaps greater when you're working in an authoritarian regime to show that they're not. You know, I mean, the M+ gallery was mentioned in the Basel statement, but we also know from the Guardian article published a few days ago that they blocked off one of the images of Ai Weiwei putting the middle finger in Tiananmen Square. So how is that contingent? How is that, you know, as you say, like, if you are wanting to work in this market and access the capital in that market, there is arguably a higher onus to show that you're not being censored and to actively take part in the discussion that are animating the people and the artists. You can't try to have best of both worlds, and I think there is a lot of responsibility on the capital that underpins these things to be bold, and it shouldn't really be on individual artists to take the risks, especially when we have the NSL. It's overly vague and extraterritorial in nature. Like, there needs to be a far more structured and systemic set of protections for both the institutions and the artists.
Yes, in the past, we really said write less, write less and paint more. But now I think this method is not very effective because we are on blacklist. Yeah, as Lumlong said, because we used one of our painting called Thousand Hands Man. This painting commemorates the anti-extradition movement in 2019. So we have used this painting to be our profile picture for many years on social media. However, last year we received an official message from Facebook saying that this picture may show content which make it harder to create a safe community, and we will reduce your page distribution. And finally, our page distribution has been reduced by half or 2/3. So it is extremely difficult to promote exhibition on social media. Furthermore, we received 2 more messages from Facebook. One is before the 1st of July, the hangover of Hong Kong anniversary, and the other is before the 1st of October, the National Day of People's Republic of China, saying that we do not recommend you to post something about politics in this period of time. So don't you think this is art censorship? So and in the past we use homophones. For example, we use big six instead of China because these two words have the same pronunciation, which Hong Kong people will understand. But now it is useless.
So I wanted to sort of, I know Yang Ju had asked me, I agree, I think, with most of what Nik also said. I think one of the ways of what that are most effective or that are necessary for politicians and for government to pay attention is that they need to have a clear enemy to attack. So I think that sometimes it's hard when they don't necessarily understand, or it's really part of our job is to be able to frame, when the hearing in Congress happened after the letter was sent from Mayor Brown about the sculpture, it actually happens that that was not a hearing that originally was set up to talk about the pillar. It just happened that I was actually testifying, and so I made the hearing about the statue. And in order for, I think, most politicians at any level, any countries, to be able to do something, they need to be handed sort of a clear story and narrative. And I think that part of what you describe, the connection between art washing and the opiate crisis and the Shaka family, I think there needs to be a narrative specifically built to go after those people that needs to be held accountable. The other that I think is not necessarily talked a lot about is that in the US in particular, and I think in European and here in the EU, a tremendous amount of funding goes into art. It is, just as there are private collectors and buyers, government are probably the single most generous supporters of the arts, and they do hold the strings to some of these institutions. May it be funding for museums, and maybe grants to individual artists, and Hong Kong government is doing what they know how to do, which is that Basel signed a contract. The government in Hong Kong is giving them money to host their show. And in the contract, it's language that says that you have to follow and make sure that you don't violate the national security law. And I think that type of, we need to expose and make clear who are the people who are the culprits, and to be able to then line up and allow for, EU or US or other government to be able to take them on. I want to maybe close with just a round for everybody to kind of help us kind of wrap around. If you can, I know we were joking about the paint more and write less. If you have a call to action that you want to issue going from here, we know that this conversation and this week here at the EU is really just the beginning of this conversation. So building the response from artists individually, from to get demand response from galleries, from auction houses, trying to raise awareness in government and public entities. But what would be your call to actions, and how do we move from here to really build the kind of robust response from artists, from consumer, from the general public, from government? So let's start with you, Nik.
Well, I would say, I think there's two things. For institutions in Europe, which is predominantly what our work has been focused on, is I would recommend sort of radical transparency. We have, there is obviously a lot of private money, but there is also a lot of public money in our institutions, and that can be great. I grew up going to the art galleries in the UK, and some of them are some of the best in the world, funded by tax-paying money, and that's amazing. But public funds have been diminishing for funding of art. So institutions are looking for more private donor funded, and some of that may be coming from China, some of that may be connected to the CCP. And so whether it's, so what are the terms of these contracts? What are the principles that underpin the decision to do this? Like, this stuff should be really transparent as to what are the terms of these relationships. This is not, this is not indexed. I'm not saying about, boycotting. We don't take a position on this. And some of the people we spoke about, there were many different positions as to whether there should be a boycott or would it hurt the wrong people. So I think in terms of the institutions, radical transparency as to how these corporate relationships that underpin art are overseen, managed, monitored, and respect fundamental human rights. The other thing I will say, just in terms of the transnational repression aspect, is protect artists and do this proactively. You have the idea where police may not get involved until it gets to a certain point of severity. That will be too late. So, Simon spoke really powerfully yesterday about the online threat that he faced. But then do the authorities properly investigate that? Do they properly investigate whether there are ties to his activism or to the state? Or do they wait until it gets to the point of an actual physical attack? So this needs to be really at the centre of how we can ensure artists like Lumli Lumlong can continue to work. You can't work if you're not safe. And so there needs to be a really proactive focus in every member state, and the UK obviously, if we're not an EU member state anymore, to take this seriously. You can't just assume people will be able to continue work. The onus is on you to make sure that they are protected to do so.
So Lumli, you get a chance to update your call to action from paint more, write less to something. What would you want people to take away and do in response?
I think the auction house or the art gallery don't have their they don't have their own will. They just to follow the rules of the Hong Kong government. So for us, we really hope the European Parliament or the UK government can put more effort to safeguard Hong Kong people living in the UK, because we fear long reach of the Chinese government. And they can stand up strongly in dealing with Chinese government, especially on human rights issue like Jimmy Lai's case. And today we are exhibiting a painting about Jimmy Lai, and we are afraid that he will spend the rest of his life in prison. So we want to show the support for him, and we also request foreign sanction against Hong Kong and Chinese officials and Hong Kong police. So I'm sorry to tell you that no matter how brave, okay, quotation mark, how brave we are, we still have fear at the bottom of our hearts. However, if we stop doing something about Hong Kong, then leaving Hong Kong is meaningless. So, and I love the Irish poet William Butler Yeats. He said, "In dreams begin responsibility." So we have cultural responsibility to preserve our own culture and own history. So I think everyone can contribute to this to preserve our culture and history. I'm grateful to those in Hong Kong who try very hard to preserve our culture. However, I'm afraid that they will be arrested sooner or later. So, and on the other hand, it is a large community of scholars or experts or artists abroad who are originally from Hong Kong. So I'm afraid that Hong Kong culture will disappear or Hong Kong art will disappear, but it could well reappear all over the world. So I think everyone can contribute in this part.
Yeah, I remember that Henry Tang, the head of the West Kowloon Cultural District, he said the opening of M+ does not mean that artistic expression is above the law. Yeah, so even though the law is inhuman, So I simply urge the European Parliament to stand strong against the CCP. Actually, we don't have solutions, so we together we will be strong too, because you know that we feel sometimes we feel quite powerless. Yes, we have done we just do what we can do, but always powerless. So that's why I said be brave, because I think everyone can do more. I think nobody will have a solution to solve this problem, because the CCP is quite yeah. So yes, I just simply urge the European Parliament and will stand strong against the CCP. Yeah.
I'm going to give Eric a chance to finish, and then I'll give you the last word.
Okay. I think one additional thing I would want to say is that people who are critics, scholars, also have a role to play here, because they create a lot of the value in the market. And I think people sitting in those positions need to pay attention to what's missing, to be sure that Hong Kong art, Chinese art, that speaks to relevant and interesting things is brought out and is a part of the major shows and exhibitions in the world. And this will be a way of bringing more attention to what is otherwise missing. It may not happen in Hong Kong, it may have to happen in Europe, it may need to happen in markets elsewhere in Asia. But I think there's a responsibility from a critical and scholarly community to work in this way. And of course, I would second Nik's point about transparency. Absolutely essential with regard to public institutions, also academic institutions.
So Jens, you get the last word.
Yes, but the last word is a question. So, what I talked with some MP from yesterday. They want to make a big decision to in this about a few months, and ask Hong Kong to give me the pillar back as a union who asked Hong Kong to give it official. They will work for that. So this is not. But there's something about that. But I think there's a possibility to make a kind of a charter or something like that. A kind of some point say, if you are involved in art, you must not make censorship, especially when you are in Hong Kong. You must not make censorship. You promise that. Something like that. Only take question like that, and maybe a charter who should enforce them to sign it. So this could be a way to have you talk about. After that, before you talk about to have some single point. But this could be the single point. To force all the firm, but not only the firm, also the museum around. And say, we don't care with the security law. We want to show that art we want to show. And we also want to show political art. We know they can always say, this is our own choice, but you could force them in this way and force them to sign it. And this is open, maybe they open that for a kind of political press on all this firm and the press from the artists, because to sign that document or something. I think maybe we could make it to that together. You have a lot of experience with that, and Eric also had a lot of experience how we could do that. And then we could try to set it out, and so there could be a part of this meeting to do something and put it out and make this paper as a kind of a tools to make it, to kill the whitewashing and art washing.
I think it's a really interesting point, and also, you know, there was this conversation earlier about these clauses in contracts that state that they have to abide to the national security law. You know, if there is a principled position, you know, say for example, take Art Basel or another international institution, that would impinge on our commitment to artistic freedom. So we will not be going here. We will go to Delhi or Tokyo or, you know, wherever. That sort of principled position should also be held up by others. You know, so that's seen as a positive. You know, there's a lot of support. There will be a lot of public support if people see that as a principled position, and if the institution itself knows that people will support that, it's not seen as a negative decision. It's seen as something that can build trust in it.
CSR, something like
Yeah,
that.
like a charter. I mean, charter is a really interesting idea. The cynic in me would be worried that it would be another vector of art washing. Like if you sign it, but then don't actually. So any charter would require monitoring, evaluation, ongoing. Once Gallery X has signed the charter, what are they doing to live up to the commitments of it? But I think to keep it as an active discussion and an active decision they have to make, as opposed to just this it's not, at the moment, the fear is that artistic freedom can be seen almost as a tick box exercise. Like, But to make it actually an active decision, they actually have to think about it in the same way as they do, the logistics of preparing the space, or getting the art and ensuring the art, and then making sure that they are defending the rights of the artists is a conversation I think we need to have more. And one quick thing actually, I mean, there's something that I've always found a bit challenging in this space is this conversation of bravery. And artists are brave. We've worked with Iranian rapper who's in prison, who's been really outspoken after the death of Mahsa Amini. And there is utter courage in so many people in this space, such as Lumli Lumlong, all of the artists that are included in our report. But when did we get to the point where artists needed to be brave? And is that in itself a fundamental flaw that it shouldn't be unsafe to be an artist? And when you have institutions like governments or EU, Council of Europe, UN, talking about the bravery of art, and artists are brave, but it sort of feels like we've given too much space to acknowledge that requires bravery. It shouldn't. Art in itself shouldn't require bravery. It's an expression of whatever it is, whether it's an external point or an internal thing. And I feel like sometimes that can be sort of used to sort of hinder more robust action. We need to do all the things that need to be done to ensure artists can act with total sort of freedom and independence and autonomy because they're protected to do so. And bravery always acknowledges that there is an implicit threat. So what are we doing to actually address that implicit threat? And I think that's something that it always sort of sticks in my head in this space.
Well, I think that's a good point to conclude at least this part of the conversation. I want to thank all of the panelists who took the time to, especially those who traveled here from afar. Thank you, Eric, for joining us remotely and bearing with us with the technical challenges. And I, again, want to thank Jens and Loretta for their role in leading this exhibition. And I think that this is the first step. And I think when Jens and I first talked about this week and this particular conversation, we were both, I think, excited about what could come of this. And I think that I've learned a lot from each and every one of you together about what can be done, even someone who's not in the art world, who's not an artist, who might not have a direct connection, that there's something to be done, and that this is hopefully a beginning of a series of action that could shine a light and expose much more clearly the censorship that is happening and give people an opportunity to actually step up and do the right thing. And so thank you very much. I noticed that there are a lot of sandwiches left, so I encourage you to stick around. For those of you who are joining us online, we hope that you will continue to follow the artists on this panel, the index on censorship, and we look forward to the next opportunity that we have to be together. So thank you so much. And eat more sandwiches.